so this is quite a study of Uji. Is kind of is a study of all of Dogen's work. So yeah, one could talk about this forever, probably, partly because it is our life. So Uji is going on forever in all directions. So just rereading. Oh, I just wanted to mention the second part that I talked about yesterday talks about great doubt. And it's Bernie Glassman, my teacher, died 3 years ago today. This is his Memorial Day. And we had a little meeting of his successors. And what we do is tell Bernie stories when we get together. But this story I'd never heard, which, and now I can't remember who told it, but whoever it was said to Bernie, I don't feel like I'm a good teacher because I have doubt. I have doubt about my ability to teach. And Bernie said, that's good. And then he added, as you teach, you will learn from your students, which is so true. And it's that point that we're all in this together and we're not obstructing each other. So that's the part that comes up next. And I read this last time, but I'll read it again. The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. So the self-arraying Shinsho, this commentary that I'm sharing with you also says, the self arrays itself and embodies the whole world. Setting time in array is to fully occupy the fluctuating impermanence of the present moment as embodied in one's person. Since a being time includes the individual's unique being time and simultaneously the arising of all being times, this becomes the totality of all being at that moment practicing together. To set the self out in array includes both the universal and the individual interacting without any obstruction. We make each moment, and each moment makes us. It is a reciprocal and unobstructed event. So our self arrays itself. The way our self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. So in other words, you are the entire world every moment. Nothing is separate. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. Things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. So in Genjo Koan, Dogen talks about this. Practice that confirms things by taking the self to them is illusion. So seeing myself as in the midst of all the things is illusion. Seeing myself as separate from all the things is illusion. For things to come forward and practice and confirm the self is enlightenment. So that experience of no self is the experience of the whole universe being me. The whole universe comes forward and is me, and that is enlightenment. I was listening to this talk by Larry Ward yesterday, and he was talking about this, and I don't know if I can find the exact quote, but oh yeah, he says that our suffering is because of the dream of separation. We think we're separate from everything, from each other, from the plants, the birds. There's a big black line. When I was in Sunday school, I must have been 3 or 4, and we were coloring. And I discovered a great way to color is to take the black crayon and draw a big black line around everything, because it makes it really stand out. I was so proud of myself in my coloring abilities. And the Sunday school teacher came up and said, and there isn't a black line around people. Isn't it amazing? My Sunday school teacher was Dogen in disguise. It's a Sunday school teacher. There's not a big black line around things. It's a dream. It's an illusion that we're separate. And it's a lot of work. What he was saying, it's a lot of work to maintain that illusion. It's a lot of work to keep everything separate. So to let go, to just allow everything to be, in other words, for the universe to come forward and be me, is the easy thing. And we're gonna, continue to talk about this, but this moves into one of Dogen's major statements, which is an understanding, major understanding of Dogen, that practice is enlightenment. And we don't think that way. We think in terms of illusion and enlightenment, right? That I'm so, I have so much delusion, such a delusional person, or you have so much delusion, you're such a delusional person. We don't think in terms of them being the same thing, that which the whole point of Uji is everything is here. And as he says in this part, they don't hinder each other. So, I mean, it's a great explanation for how complicated our practice is, because when we get to talking about delusion and enlightenment, it gets so complicated. What's delusion? What's enlightenment? Am I deluded? Am I enlightened? Are you? And it's so complex, and it's because it's the same thing, because it's both. And we experience both. I mean, Dogen also says when one is light, the other is dark, but they're here. They're all here, and they don't hinder each other. It's okay. It's okay to be who you are. Sometimes in very difficult places, afraid, angry, lonely, ashamed, guilty. Sometimes we fall into a very dark hole. And at the same time, we're completely enlightened. that's going on at the same time. So that's what he means. They don't hinder each other because they're time. Because we tend to think of all this takes up space. So I've only got so much space in my experience. So if I'm experiencing suffering, then great joy can't be there too, when we think of it in terms of space. But thinking of it in terms of time or being, they're all here. They're all right here. That's what he's trying to say. Let me read some more. Maybe it will make it very clear. Dogen says, practice that confirms things by taking the self to them is illusion. For things to come forward and practice and confirm the self is enlightenment. When we want to control a situation, our small self is charging ahead. This small self gives us a false confirmation of our actions. Conversely, when we allow things to come forward and practice with us, this is the confirmation of the arrayed self. So when the small self is in charge all the time, it's kind of about, I want to control, I want this to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, we get all upset, rather than just allowing things to be with us. When we array the self, we are able to manifest the true self, the self of enlightened response. The self of enlightened response is able to reflect, hold, and embody all aspects of its situation. It is the self that orders and ranks itself in the best possible way with true reality, the world arising at this time being, or it is true reality. The self is true reality. Each of us and all things are like a hologram in which each part is also the whole. The more we believe we are separate from another person, the more conflict arises when we are confronted with that person's view. So we set up little fights all the time, little competitions, little games about I'm right, you're wrong. And then it becomes important for me to prove that I'm right, or maybe I have to do something mean to not have you in my life anymore because you're wrong. That's when we see ourselves as separate. We have a difficult time incorporating the idea that we are the same being time as the person who does not agree with us. Hence, we think that someone holding a different idea than ours has no kinship with us. We might even think that this other person is a threat. This kind of thinking is polarizing and makes it difficult for us to work together. In such instances, we are aware of our uniqueness, but not our sameness. And this is what Dr. Ward was saying. Something he uses is I am that, which he had like Sanskrit or something way to say that. But when like when I'm getting in a fight with someone, someone's mad at me, I'm mad at them, to look at that person and say, I am that. Like particularly the dogs. I am that barking idiot. And just remind myself, no separation. I am that. And he also says, he's talking about ecology really, and archetypes for ecology, but the darkness just one of the archetypes. And that, of course, I've been talking about since Zenju so much emphasizes befriending the darkness and getting to know the darkness rather than being afraid of it. The archetype for darkness, he said, is completely being whole with no flaws. Because in the darkness, you can't see the flaws. And he even went so far to say is he doesn't think about other people's flaws. He doesn't, we have the precept, don't speak of people's flaws, errors and faults. But he's saying he doesn't even think. We're as a practice to not think of other people's flaws. And that's an interesting one for me. Because of course, as a teacher, I think it's my job to see where, not really flaws, but where a student is holding on, why the student hasn't really let go. And I'm usually wrong, but just working together on that is just to help each of you, all of us, to figure out where we're holding on, how we're perpetuating that dream of separation. And he was saying that that's a whole lot more work to keep that separation going and to keep that flaw seeking going is a whole lot more work than just admitting the fact we're all one. Those flaws are my flaws. And she says, Shinso says, don't mistake this as a practice of passivity. This teaching is not about allowing yourself to be run over by someone. We should set boundaries. The question is how we set boundaries. Are we punitive or intelligently compassionate? Our ability to be skillful is, in a large part, depending upon our understanding of our shared experience as human beings. And that's something Dr. Ward talked about, and this was the archetype for life. He said, we need to recover kinship, that how little really closeness we feel with each other. And that really struck me. I think of social intimacy, like today being with my Dharma brothers and sisters, such a feeling of intimacy. Or they were talking about it as heart. Oh, here's my heart. People would come on and go, oh, here's my heart. And of course, I spent hours and hours practicing with these people and fighting and separating, having opinions, seeing flaws. But that social intimacy, I don't know if you feel that way, that there isn't enough of that in your life. If it feels that way, that's because we cultivate separation. We cultivate criticizing each other and seeing each other as separate rather than doing this practice, I am that. So back to Dogen, things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. And there's a comment about that, that the words that Dogen uses are same, awakened, time, and mind. And the way he arranges them is so intertwined that to say the same, awakened, time, mind is the simultaneous awakening of the self and the world. That's this Uji. In this moment, everything is here, and they intertwine together to awaken the world. And that's, I think, the wonderful thing about Dogen is his writing was like that. The way he used the words, it's practice. Like she says, this Uji is a practice manual for how to wake up. So even in the words, he's giving that information about no separation. A way-seeking moment arises in this mind. This mind, that's the big mind. That's all of our minds. The way-seeking is the desire to wake up. It is the same with practice and with attaining the way. Thus, the self setting itself out in array sees itself. And she says, the principle of Zazen and other schools is to wait for enlightenment. For example, their practice is like having crossed over a great ocean on a raft. Thinking upon the crossing the ocean, one should discard the raft. The Zazen of our Buddha ancestors is not like this, but is simply Buddha's practice. We could say that the situation of Buddha's house is the oneness in which essence, practice, and expounding are one and the same. So that's kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about the paramitas the other Sunday, is the paramitas are supposed to be, this is the method to cross from delusion to enlightenment in a boat. And they're very useful, the paramitas. And I was talking about them because I think they're very useful, but it does have this model of now I'm deluded, and now I'm gonna do these things, giving and energy and samadhi, and do all these practices, and then I'll be able to cross to awakening. So this is not how Dogen sees it. Dogen sees it as right now is awakening, and practice, Zazen, is awakened, is enlightenment. Right now, nothing to do. And that's really the whole point of this little part, that it's easy. The hard thing is keeping the separation. The hard thing is holding on to the delusion, holding on to our needs and desires and angers and all of the things that we create to keep the dream of separation going. So the practice really doesn't require much work. It just requires letting go, just allowing ourselves to be in this awakened moment. So the time of our delusion does not obstruct the time of our realization. They're both here. Right now, they're both here. Our practice is not in order to attain realization. Practice itself is the actualization of realization. If practice and enlightenment were two things, as it appears to an ordinary person, each could be recognized separately. So that's what he says in Bendoa. So that's kind of what I'm saying is, why does it seem so complicated? Why does it seem so contradictory? Because they're both here, because it's all here. Everything is here. The worst thing we can imagine and the very best thing is right here. And the wonderful thing about this is the total freedom of our life. Everything's constantly changing, and it's all right here, and enlightenment is right here. And the more we can open up, the more we can experience that. There's a tendency as we get older to shut down. I think that there's disappointments. There's things that didn't go our way. There's tragedy. There's imperfection. There's mistakes. And so we begin to kind of, well, just to make sure that nothing bad ever happens to me again, I'm not going to make any more friends. I'm not going to ever go out again. I'm not going to try anything new. I'm not going to say how I feel openly. We kind of start shutting down where we've had bad experiences. And after a while, you kind of just are on a couch watching football because like we're remembering well, I tried that and I made a mistake and it didn't feel good, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And so what this Uji is really speaking to is, of course, we've had great loss. Of course, we've had great disappointment. Life includes everything. Of course, we've made terrible mistakes. Of course, we've been hurt. Of course, we've hurt others. And that's all part of this wonderful moment, which also includes all the joy and the successes and the wonderful friendships and the beautiful sunrise. Dr. Ward was talking about every sunset, every sunset, every sunrise reminds me of how wonderful our life is. So the wonderful thing about Uji is that it's constantly opening up. At this meeting today, Elisa, who is Bernie's daughter, I used to babysit her. Now she has a son about that age, but she said, what happened to you after my dad died? How did you change in response to his death after Bernie died? And I thought it was a wonderful question. And actually, I thought it was then I realized that I think I had more of a change when my Seisen Roshi died, because I had a lot of ideas of how I was supposed to be in terms of traditional Buddhism and what Roshi wanted and pleasing Roshi, because I'd been with him in the beginning part. But Bernie really carried this expansion, this Uji, and his way of looking at the Dharma and what each person could do, should do, could do, completely expansive in terms of kind of you be you, as they say. And that was really the gift that Bernie gave me, was not to worry about what he thought. And every once in a while, I do my little stuff to try to get him to like me or whatever. And he just was so disdainful. He did not like that at all. But always encouraging, opening up to the universe. And as Dogen puts it, the universe is a rain around us. So that's who we are, and that's our potential, the whole universe. And it includes the darkness, it includes mistakes, it includes suffering, it includes everything. And for sure, enlightenment. Right now, it's right here with all of us. There's no doubt about that. Just have to open our eyes and see it. So I encourage you, keep on going. That was what Bernie always told me in Daison when I first started working with him, when he was Tetsugen sensei. He'd say, keep on going, and trust yourself, trust the practice. But if what comes up as doubt, great, as Bernie said, great. Use that doubt. Just use whatever is there to really plow into this wonderful practice.